Hey, welcome back to the Unshakeable podcast, week 5. We are halfway through our Anchor series, and Ty, you're back for week 5. Whatever we were paying you to do this, just double it.
Come on. It's about time.
What's 0 times 2?
Depends who you ask.
Yeah, you are with us. And then we've got Kevin, who, for those who don't know who you are, who I like to call Dr. Wissman, because it makes you sound so smart.
Yeah, I try to stay away from that, honestly. Yeah.
How long have you been on the Hope City staff?
Hope City staff, 4 years.
Has it been 4 years?
3 months, 2 weeks.
Not that anybody's
9
counting.
days. Nobody's counting. There's a clock on the wall.
So I remember when we first had a conversation about, man, what would it look like to launch really this counseling wing or arm of what we're doing ministry-wise that would help people really kind of step into some conversations that maybe were harder to navigate. And I remember we were sitting at First Watch and I was like, man, give me some wisdom. And the fact that you answered God's call, you and Amy are awesome to step into this. You've been leading our ministry right now that's doing a lot to bring health into people's lives. We got, how long have we been in our new space?
New office. We moved there in August last year. So
almost
over a year.
A little over a year, yeah. So, man, it is a killer space. I know a lot of folks in our church, if they haven't had an appointment in the counseling office, haven't seen it. It is amazing. And I love it because when I walk in, there's like such a peace. I mean, you guys have just done a good job of inviting the Spirit of God to invade that space, and we're just seeing God do some amazing healing work in that. And so, super pumped you're joining
Happy
us.
to be here.
And how do you like it that on the week that I preach on sexual morality, you get invited on the podcast?
Well, it makes me feel a little bit insecure because I'm not sure where we're going with this.
I'm just curious, how many HIPAA violations can we break in one podcast?
I know everybody who's getting counseling is like, oh no,
no.
So we always harass Kevin because on Mondays we sit around the circle. It's a circle. It's a counseling. We circle up our staff. We just share what God's doing in the church, and we always look at Kevin. And he's just like, I can't say anything, but he's doing some good stuff, And so I love it because even our staff counsels with you, and we've got a great team with Shannon and Bo over there. And man, you guys are just crushing it. But for those who've never experienced counseling, because for a long time it was kind of a faux pas. Like, man, I don't know if that's I don't want to be that bad. And I'm like, man, it is not like that. You need it. It's something that is such a blessing and brings resources to your life. So we want to be healthy on our staff with our ministry staff. And so we encourage all our staff to jump in and have conversations, if not monthly, quarterly, just to make sure that we're addressing those things in our lives that are needing to be addressed. We could not do that if it wasn't for you and your leadership. So I just want to say thank you to start. So before we jump into this exciting topic of sexual morality, thank you for being here.
Of course.
We do have the boxing gloves in case. Tyler has tried to fight several of
animals, people, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think last week you looked at Shane and said, I'll fight you. I think you said that and we just kind of glossed over it and kept going.
I never know what I'm going to say.
But I think that was fair because Shane said that he could take on a pet dog. That was what Shane thought he could fight. And I thought that was worthy of you challenging him. And
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, that was weak.
Kev, I'll tell you this. If the Chiefs don't turn their season around, there's a good chance I'm going to wind up in your office.
Yeah, I'll bring Branch with me, right?
We're working on it. Yeah, we're working on it. Man, so good. So this was a heavy topic this week. And actually today we're probably going to dive in quicker than we normally do. But it was a heavy topic because anytime you deal with sexual morality, you're really talking about hidden sin. And then you're just kind of like opening doors that people have been keeping closed for a long time. And we do that. We hide, especially sexual sin, we hide. So I even felt it when I was preaching. And so as we jump in, we're going to try to cover a couple different 15, 16 different topics, but because there's way more in this than we'll have time today. But I was thinking about this because of the controversy around the halftime show. If you didn't know this, if you're not up on current events, like my wife would have no clue of this right now. Rachel's so awesome because she's like, I don't know what goes on with football. I'll watch it, but I don't know who's playing and I don't care. And so I was reading a lot of this stuff around, Bad Bunny has been designated as our halftime entertainment this year. And there's a lot of controversy around him because he is a big proponent of the LGBTQ community. He has showed up on late night in skirt. He's been on the MTV Awards in a dress. He's a Latino artist that's huge. But would identify as cisgender and, just fluid sexuality.
Well, they threw the term out.
Yeah. It was just whatever, whatever works. And so we were laughing because we're like, okay, obviously the NFL is struggling a little bit with knowing their demographic, but
know your audience, read the room.
Let me ask you this. If you guys were to pick somebody to do the halftime show, who would you pick?
I've got two.
Okay.
I'm gonna get made fun of probably for both of them.
Oh yeah, for sure.
My favorite artist of all time, being an Indiana boy, is John Mellencamp.
Okay. Hey, that's not even a bad pick.
Yeah, I love it. The second one, you remember at Light Up the City?
Yeah.
How we had the AI.
Oh yeah.
Shane voice. Dude,
AI Shane.
AI Shane Super Bowl halftime show.
AI Country Shane halftime
Personalized. Think about, we could just change the game.
I love it. I'm in on both of those.
Come on.
Now, Kevin, I know a lot about you, but this answer is, I'm super anxious to hear
It's
this.
going to be very, very revealing. My first, so if Ty gets two, I ask for two as well. So I would go with Chris Stapleton. Would probably be one of my favorites.
Real or
sure.
AI, Chris Stapleton?
No, the real one. The real one. The real for sure. My second one, just because I find this person very entertaining, and it would be a great for everybody. My wife. My wife would be extremely entertaining.
As the
Absolutely. She would love an opportunity, I'm sure. I have no idea what she would come up with.
She loves the stage.
She would love it. Yes, absolutely. I'd put her out there.
What about you?
Oh gosh. You could not beat a Stapleton halftime show. That would be phenomenal. And maybe Stapleton and Shane.
Dude.
That'd be like the ultimate mix.
Chris Shane?
Shane Pulton?
Shane Pulton. We can go down a rabbit hole on that. Man, I was, this is so funny because it's such golly, the Super Bowl halftime show, that's like such an iconic moment. But how interesting, because people are like, there's not an agenda behind the sexual revolution. I'm like, no, there definitely is an agenda. There is no way that was a coincidence or accident that he was asked to do that. Now I've seen there's a movement, I think by Turning Point USA, to do an alternative halftime show. And it was like Kid Rock and I don't know who all they've announced to be on that.
I thought it was like Christian artists.
I don't think so. I think it's like, I think it's like,
Kid Rock not?
Kid Rock does worship, Tyler. I don't know where you've been. I think it was, oh gosh, who was it? Ted Nugent was one of them.
Really?
So it's basically
like Cat Scratch Fever.
It's basically just like America, that's like their version of halftime show. So, but it's fascinating because there's definitely a split in the country on this issue. So as we dive in, one of the things I talked about Sunday was understanding the philosophy and the structure behind this two-story view that my body is different than my spiritual life or mind, right? My mind and my body are two different things. And so I felt like I was given a lot of information Sunday at once. And I know I kind of dumped all this info on folks, but I really do believe we've got to learn the framework behind what we believe. And what Paul is saying is that God wants to restore not just your spirit and your mind, but your body as well. Like, I think we forget, like, we are going to live in heaven with our bodies.
Yeah.
Like, and I have people ask like, so what version of your body? And I'm like, well, no version of my body's ever been great. So I'd be like, maybe when I was 25 and I'm like, I wasn't even as muscular as I wanted to be at 25, So I think I was winded going upstairs at 25. So, I don't know how all that works, but I think you said it, Kev, like we were created first.
Yeah. So
as
physically,
physically.
God created us first as a physical being before he ever breathed into us the
breathed
breath of
his spirit into us.
Yeah.
And so I mentioned how Paul will sometimes use the conversation of flesh versus spirit, but really what he's talking about with our flesh is our sin nature. So sometimes we separate our spirit and our body because we interpret that flesh as our suit, our physical suit. And he's like, no, that flesh he's talking about is your sinful nature. So what he does then in 1 Corinthians is he says, especially, and he uses marriage as a great example of this, he says, your body and your spirit, your relationship with the Lord and how you conduct, it's a temple, right? So we've got some, just some stuff culturally that we're navigating. It seems like culture's starting to shift a little bit on the pronoun conversation. For a while, it seemed like it was headed in a direction of like, if you don't embrace this, you're you have hatred, you're a bigot, you're oppressing people who feel differently than
Acts
you.
of violence.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that argument start to fall apart because that line of thinking has just been chased into oblivion. You can't nail anything down like that. Now there's still a contingency of people in our culture that want to hang on to the pronoun, fascination.
Yep.
But in all of that, it still is this separation of mind and body, right? Like I can think differently than I am, or I can feel differently than my body may suggest I am.
Yeah.
And so getting into this, my first thoughts went to what we're navigating with transgender issues. Although I would say the transgender issue is actually, for me, is one of the easier conversations. So I think that conversation, and we can have that today. That conversation is one that I can get my head around. There's other conversations that are harder to navigate, but I was looking at some stats. National Library of Science. Listen to this because this is going to blow you away. So we see this issue. It's now in kids programming. It's in late night programming. It's in regular TV programming. I think there's been a big deal recently on Netflix about just the transgender agenda. This is what I was reading out of the National Library of Medicine. The prevalence of transgender individuals in the United States is approximately 0.3%. And it says that's 0.3% of the adult population. And it says investigations that only include individuals' transgender diagnoses. So that's not those who have been diagnosed, even with like gender dysphoria, things like that. Those who have been diagnosed is 0.008%. And so now I don't want to dismiss any of those numbers, but I think there is a small segment of our population that is really struggling mentally with this issue of mind and body, and it's not syncing up for them. And I want to have so much compassion on somebody like that. I've talked to folks who have wrestled with that, and you talk about they are so conflicted. It is such a struggle for them, and I want to have compassion on them. But then I think what we're seeing is there's this big swath of people who are just like, man, I want to open the door for any kind of sexual fluidity that allows me to justify anything I want to do.
Yeah.
If I want to have,
It's crazy. It seems like culture has given, that's such a small percentage.
It is.
It seems like culture has given it the loudest voice. It almost makes you feel like, man, if I don't wrestle with that, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah. Well, and so we talked about the upper level being morality and the lower level being science.
Yeah.
But I wanted to share this with you too. It says individuals who underwent gender affirming surgery had a 12-fold higher suicide attempt than those who didn't.
Wow.
So after they went through, because in our thinking, it's like, well, man, if I can just get my body to line up with what I'm thinking, right? So I'll just change my body, physically alter my anatomy to line up with what I think, and then that will satisfy. And actually, it increased suicide. So we're seeing numbers now that this line of thinking is not true. It's just not the way it is. It says patients who have undergone gender affirming surgery are associated with a significantly elevated risk of suicide. And so the answer in the secular world is we just need more post-psychiatry. Like we just need to help them afterwards. It's like, no, that's not resolving the issue. And so I don't know, Kevin, you guys are seeing sexual identity issues. I'm having conversations. I know Ty is with families who are wrestling this with kids and family members, and I've got somebody who's in my family that is getting ready to marry somebody of the same gender. Do I attend? Do I not? Like how do I resolve all this in my mind? And I don't know. I don't know if you could even do that. I always look at you and I'm like, what can you share?
Yeah,
what
when you
can you not share?
Put like a name and a face to an issue, it changes it.
It does. And if we were to if you were even to take your sample size and go, man, this is over the years, you've counseled for a long time. Over the years, this is kind of the increase, or I always like to make up percentages. I'm always like, I think 70%. But if you were to say, hey, there was, it seems like the increase over the years has been X, or we're seeing more people. What are your observations?
It's interesting. I would probably even say that similar to what the statistics are that you're reporting, at least, and considering we're here in Southwest Missouri, so I think there's a little bit of difference with that. But I would say maybe 1% of the folks that come in to see me are dealing with sexual identity, sexual dysphoria types of things, which is pretty small then compared to the other things that are going on. So
and again, maybe that's because we're not in a real progressive area, but I talk to pastors in highly progressive areas, and I don't think it. I mean, I think the truth, and if we were to say the science behind it, is there's actually a spiritual agenda to a lot of this to, I think, discombobulate and confuse a population when it comes to separating our minds from our bodies. And then if it is 1%, man, let's have compassion and care and walk with those who really are struggling with this, and see if we can't, help in any way we can to see that God sees them complete and whole, not as this separate two-story person. And so that's interesting. I talked a little bit about the dominion covenant back in Genesis, and just God's design in that, and how we have freedom to live however we want, but there should be restrictions in that.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that we've taught or maybe taught enough on what it looks like to evaluate your life and go, man, what are some like areas that I need to restrict?
Yeah.
Just even my sexual intake, from images to, to movies because we just get inflated. I know back in the day, one of the illustrations I heard was that of a sumo wrestler. Like a sumo wrestler doesn't become a sumo wrestler overnight. They feed and feed and feed
I've never heard that.
And then they get so big that their appetite has to be quenched. And I think when you think about your sexual desire, like when we inflate it, then it's almost like we have to intake all this to keep that hunger satisfied. And so one of the phrases was, when it comes to fending off or stepping away from sexual immorality, you have to starve the sumo. That was the phrase. It's like, you got to starve that sumo wrestler. And so it's like, there's an element in this, and I don't know. I would love to hear your thoughts on what are you counseling folks towards when it comes. And we're going to get into something here at the end that I want everybody to hang on to, because what you're going to share at the end, I think, is a great tool. But how are you counseling people, even as they come in and they're like, man, my sexual appetite is way out of control? Where do you start?
I think, it begins in the beginning, really, of where I begin with that is asking them when they were first exposed to any type of sexual material and content, And for me, in my own personal story, it's like age 11, And what we're seeing now is that age is lowering. We're talking about
you look up
I did a statistic on it. It says the average age is anywhere between like 9 and 13. I mean, as early as 9.
Yeah. So we've got, I said it Sunday, but we've got the largest, massive, unendable library of pornography at our fingertips at any moment.
I heard a pastor say, like, if you give your kid a phone and you have no restrictions on it, it's like, getting ready for bed, going, hey, here's a loaded gun. See you in the morning.
Yeah.
That's kind of very similar to that. Yeah, man. It's scary.
So true. So, I come in, I sit down, I'm like, Kevin, man, I just feel and maybe it takes me a little bit to get there, but maybe I come in, I'm like, man, I just feel like I'm out of control. I know there's practical things I can do, but what do you tell me in that moment?
First, I want to be able to give them just that kindness and compassion and be able to recognize of like, I get it, because we all have struggles. So being able to just relate with them in that. But then there are tools and plans to be able to use. Being able to understand your own cycle, what kind of leads you into that. Being able to help create an escape plan for when temptation does come, because we know that when we are tempted, right, it's going to take place. But then we want to put plans together then too of like, how are we going to be able to recover from this as well? So we got to get some action plans put together.
That's what I love about what you guys, and I brag on you guys all the time, so I think it's fair.
Warranted.
It's warranted. So, but what I love that you guys do is you talk about strategy. Like, man, what's a strategy to get healthy? Strategy, and it's from a biblical center, but what's a strategy to address this stuff in my life? And if we be honest, most of us have zero strategy when it comes to sexual intake, sexual immorality. There's no strategy. It's just like, I mean, it's like the walls are down, and whatever comes in, it's like, uh-oh.
Well, here's another stat for you. It says 84% of people that consume pornography say no one is helping them avoid pornography, and then 50% say that no one even knows about their habit.
Yeah. So we're way over sexualized.
Which goes exactly to that of like, it goes to, we hide this, right? It's the secret sin of like, we don't want to talk about these things, but it's because I believe that shame and our nakedness
or shame.
Or shame.
Shame's a real problem.
Let me
finish the sentence before we go to that, right? Of like, because our nakedness and our shame are linked together.
Yeah.
It goes back to the very beginning. They were both naked and they felt no shame.
Oh, man.
Right? So shame is so interconnected.
Isn't that wild? I mean, the minute sin entered, they were naked and shame entered the picture.
Yeah.
And that is the way even now that most of us are navigating
it's crazy.
that. Man. Okay, so let's give some more statistics here. We gave the statistics on teens and kids, how young they are.
Yep.
The top 4 ways right now kids learn about sex.
Yeah, it's crazy. It comes from their peers. It comes from social media. It comes from pornography, and it comes from just internet searches.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Is there not health class anymore?
Well, not on this stuff. Those books are too old. Yeah, because I'll tell you this. I mean, as somebody who's on social media, like I get requests from somebody, and I'm like, and I'm like, this is not good. Usually show it to my wife, and I'm like, hey, and she'll delete it off my phone. But that stuff's coming in, and it's nothing I'm seeking. And I'm like, there's no way. If it's me, I'm a pastor, that stuff's coming. It's coming in droves to our kids and to our teens and to those in our church. And so we look at that, and I would say this. Now, some parents were really good about this, but if you're a parent right now that is not talking about, if you've got a kid 8 or older, and you're not talking about sex, and how there are blessings in that, and yet if you don't restrict the freedoms that you have, it'll end up destroying you and lead to destruction, and it'll eat away at your life. It'll cause you to live in shame. Yeah. If we're not having those conversations, then we're going to find ourselves too late to the conversation.
What do you guys think keeps parents from having those conversations? You know, like, I'm just like remembering, like, you think back to like the talk you had with your parents. You're like, hey, buddy. So speaking of baseball,
I have a funny story about when I told my son about the birds and the bees.
Oh yeah,
and it's probably for a different podcast. But I look back and I'm like, I don't know if I did a very good job. But I'd love to hear what you think, Kevin. I think some of it is I don't know that we've built our own sexual ethic. Like, I don't know that we know our own framework. So it's like, how do I teach my kids something that I don't know what I believe about it? You know? And then on top of that, if I have sexual immorality in my life, how do I look at my kids and encourage them not to? Yep. So I think there's even guilt in that. So I don't know.
No, I think you're exactly right. That's a perfect. What I was going to say then too, of like, until we've resolved our own and understand our own, we're not able to communicate it or help our children.
So what we end up doing in our own sexual immorality is we end up almost not building or letting down the barrier for our family and for our kids. I mean, we're letting that into our lives, and it's impacting our kids as well.
Scary, man.
One of the things I want to be able to say though too, of like, for parents that are listening to this, of like, your kids aren't looking for this intentionally either.
Oh yeah.
But like, there's nothing, like, it just shows up. Kind of what you were saying too, of like, there are just these messages that come. So even through the games that they play, just through anything that they're doing that's just even educational, of like, it just shows itself.
And will you speak to this for a second?
Yeah.
How is it tied to stress? Because there's a dopamine impact especially with images and and sexual enticement and desire.
Yeah, so absolutely. There's a whole dopamine cycle that we can get into to be able to understand that. But ultimately, the short story to that is there is a euphoria experience that we get. So even going back to like that first experience for me of like, you feel that lightheadedness, the flush, the warmth that kind of comes over, your heart starts racing a little bit faster. I mean, and really, this is how God intended it, right? Of like when he brought woman to Adam, of like, you know, like flesh of my flesh, of like, there's an excitement to that. And that's what we crave. That's what we want. It's a part of that stuff. But it's been culture has stolen that from us, or the enemy.
Well, don't they say it's like very similar to like the high that you get on like a drug?
Oh man.
Yeah, what you experience from that is actually higher than what you would get from heroin.
That's crazy.
The high that you experience. So
well, and the quickness in which you can become addicted. I mean, it is way quicker than a physical drug. That addiction and that hit becomes like I've heard within days you can become addicted if you allow it to consume you that quick. And so there's a danger to it.
When you think, though, when it starts that young, though, too, right? Of like, because, an 11, 12-year-old or 9 to 13, they don't even have problem-solving abilities yet.
And I know we tend to lump it all into pornography, but I think it goes into, you can take that into fantasy books, novels. I know on the female side, the romanticizing and the sexualization of books and movies and how all of that has come in different directions. Typically, not all, but typically women are more moved emotionally into that fantasy world. Men are more moved visually into that fantasy world, and both can become a trap. I also wanted to talk real briefly, and then I want to get into this piece that Kevin's going to share. I want to talk a little bit about marriage, singleness, cohabitation. I hit on it a little bit Sunday, but we have, a lot of people listen to this podcast. We have people in our church that are trying to wrestle with, navigate. Okay, we're not married, but we're living together. We're intimate outside of marriage. In fact, I think one of the stats we pulled up, 90% of people engage in sex before marriage right now, and the average age is 17. So obviously we've lost sight of the fact that we can't have sex with people and it not impact us for the long haul, right? So it's we're certainly in a culture right now that you gotta test drive the car before you buy it.
Got to put the shoes on before you buy them.
You got to put shoes on before you got to try it out.
I thought the way you kind of set it up, especially like getting into cohabitation, you were you say, hey, the Bible doesn't say like you can't live together.
Yeah.
But what was the line you said? You said,
I've never met a couple that live together and not
if you've done it,
you'll be the first.
Yeah. Guinness World Record.
Because I think we do want to stay true to the Word of God, and the Word of God says, hey, intimacy, sexual intimacy, when the two become one, you in a dating relationship, you are not ready to become one with that person. Yeah. I've used the illustration of Play-Doh before. You take a red and blue Play-Doh and you mash it together and you go, hey, now separate it. You can't. Like, you have given yourself to that person in a way physically that you can't undo. Now, can God redeem? He redeems and he restores, but there is something in that. Paul tells us that you sin against your body. There's a physical attachment in that. And so it's actually just a lie.
Yeah.
It's just a lie. And what it is we don't trust the fact that if we abstain from sex, we get into a marriage that God is actually going to allow our sexual intimacy to flourish and thrive in that marriage. We're like, well, what if I get into it and it doesn't? I'm like, well, God's got to know what he's talking about at some point. We got to trust him in something, right?
Yeah.
And so
culture pushes this whole man, you need to live together before you get married. It's like, but the reality is that people, culture will say, hey, you're actually preparing for marriage, but the statistics say you're actually preparing for divorce. It's like you're at a risk of 50 to 80%.
Okay, I was going to say, what numbers did you?
It's 50 to 80% more likely to get divorced if you live together before marriage.
Isn't that wild?
It's insane.
So you're not starting off with the principles of God at the center. You're somehow hoping to attain those as you get going, and it's just a different way of doing it. We didn't cover 1 Corinthians 7. It talks about singles.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of singles in our church.
Yeah.
And I love what Paul says. Paul says, for those of you who are single, you're obligated to God. For those of you who are married, you're obligated to your spouse and to God. Yeah. So if you're single, take full advantage of the fact that God's calling on your life. You have the ability to do ministry and kingdom stuff at a full throttle impact. You don't have to worry about pleasing a spouse. You just have to worry about pleasing God. And so I want to encourage our singles too, because it can be hard. I mean, I've talked to singles and I've walked with singles, got good friends who are single that are like, man, I want to be married, or I just want a significant other. And when we can, in our attempt even to talk about healthy marriage, we can fantasize about, man, if I just was married, then my problems would be solved.
Yep.
And I often, when I was a youth pastor, I would teach young guys, I'd say, hey, some of you are thinking right now that when you get married, lust is going to go away. And it's not.
Yeah.
Because intimacy and lust are two different things.
Well, and we have a culture that just says, like, if you're not with someone or talking to someone or in a relationship, there must be something wrong with you.
You're not valued. Yeah. And I think we need to preach and reaffirm what Paul is saying in the fact that, man, God uses those who are single mightily for his kingdom. And I think Paul was evidence of that.
Yeah.
So I want to do this. I know we don't have a ton of time. We could talk about so much today, but Kev, I want you to share with us something I think is going to be really practical. And that is this idea of a shame cycle. Because one of the things when we talk about sexual immorality that we're dealing with is the reason most people don't want to talk about it, and we keep it behind the door in a locked closet, any sexual immorality, is because there is shame associated with it that, can be paralyzing. And so set us up a little bit for maybe give us a brief description of how this shame cycle even starts. And then we're going to throw this image up here in a moment, and I'd like for you to walk us through what this looks like. So for folks who are listening and you're not watching it on YouTube, it'd be worth going on and grabbing this image off of YouTube here in a second. But how does the shame cycle even get started?
I think first let's just give a good definition for shame. And I think, Ty, you did that really well earlier. Can you go ahead? And,
it was like there's a difference between guilt and shame. Like guilt is like what I did is bad. Shame is I am bad.
Exactly.
Kind of what we talk
about. Shame becomes a part of identity then. It's basically that we are bad. And one of the things I love about Brene Brown that she says is like we all have it, right? And none of us really want to talk about it. And the less that we talk about it, the more power it ends up holding over us. So what we want to be able to do is understand how that power is there. And we can see that then through this shame cycle. And if we were to look at this as a clock face, and you begin to look then up the top is 12 o'clock, right? And that's kind of where we drop into this shame cycle. There's something that's taken place in your current life. Cody, you mentioned just earlier, just stress. It could be, work overload. It could be an argument with a spouse. It could be, anything that we're dealing with.
Even something traumatic.
Something,
significant or insignificant.
Either, absolutely. And we feel discomfort. So in that discomfort, we need to escape. Right. So there's something that's taken place and we're just wanting to get away from it. And we go to those things that feel good. Right. So whatever it is then that feels good. For some of us, that could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be work, it could be performance and things. Others, it could be, pornography or sex addiction type of thing. And we do what we can to escape those feelings of shame. And then we end up finding ourselves, that's where the dopamine begins to kick in and we start to experience this euphoria. That's when we're no longer thinking clearly. Like actually the frontal part of the lobe begins to disconnect. So we're not making rational decisions. We're not making good decisions in those moments and we engage in the behavior. And that's kind of that acting out phase. And we do that thing that we said that we would never do again. And we move away from a restoration place. And then we end up dwelling there. It becomes almost like an immediate level of despair that just sets in and feelings of hopelessness of like, here I am again. I can't believe I'm here. We're at the bottom of the pit.
This is the bottom.
This is the bottom. Yeah. This is, that 6 o'clock spot right there you see on here. And it's like we are desperate. I mean, that's where I will meet a lot of people is when they found themselves there. And it's heartbreaking because they're stuck in this, because then if they remain there, it just returns back up to that feeling of shame. And then we start that cycle all over again, like where we get angry at ourselves and we give up and it's like, there's no way out of this. And we just continue in this.
And Kevin, I think it's good to clarify, like, the difference is why it's good to identify the difference between guilt and shame is guilt is from God.
Absolutely. It's
conviction. It is conviction.
Yes.
Shame is not from God.
Condemnation.
So that God does not bring condemnation. He brings freedom. And so I think that it is okay to feel guilty, like in the sense of a convicted, like, man, I need to shore some things up in my life. But when you start into the shame cycle, man, this is where the enemy gets a hold of your life. And man, you talk about depression and anxiety. And so loneliness and isolation and this feeling of I'm broken and nothing can fix me. Like I'm just broken. And you begin to get to a place mentally where, I mean, it's wild. So this is when we talk about sexual identity issues, you could understand in someone's shame of not feeling in their mind like their body is matching. You can understand in that shame why they're trying to get things to match, because it's despair. You can understand why suicide rates skyrocket and all these things, because there's just this feeling of despair and I'm stuck and this is who I am. And it's not.
Right.
Like that's what God wants to redeem and restore. And so spiritually, getting off this shame cycle, when somebody comes in, you probably, I would assume when somebody comes in, you're identifying kind of where they are.
Try to help them understand that
cycle. But you're also going to go, there's some things that are activating this cycle for you. So how, like if I'm sitting here and just maybe a couple practical tools, but if I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, I find myself cycling like this. Like I'll come to church and I'll ask God for forgiveness. And I've been, you mentioned, man, I've been turning to alcohol or sexual addiction or whatever it is for these things, then what do I do to get off this cycle? How do I address some of these things that are activating it? Because maybe I don't even know what's activating that.
I mean, the first thing I tell most everybody that comes in is you just need to slow down. Slow down and become aware.
Wow.
Your body is telling you something. So when you're feeling stressed, your body begins to sense that first, and you got to slow that down. To be able to understand it, to be able to see what's the story of even where that comes from. So is it coming from like a place of inadequacy or insecurity, of worthlessness, of rejection, of like there are things that have happened in your life that have shaped that and have created then those feelings that we're just trying to escape from. But oftentimes we don't like to look back. Right?
So you use some tools that I love, but we talk about some heart shapers and sore spots. Can you define those two things for us? Because there's a lot in this, and I'm asking you to unpack a lot in a very little amount of time.
Heart shapers are the things that have shaped our life. So we've all had things in our life that have shaped us in some way. And that typically comes through some type of relationship. So whether that's with a parent, a caregiver, a teacher, a coach, a pastor, like there's things that have happened in our life that have shaped us and have left us then with these sore spots. And sore spots are kind of what I was talking about then, of like feelings of inadequacy or rejection, fear, anger. And those are the things then that show up in those times where we're feeling those same experiences that we had in the original heart-shaping event. And because they haven't been resolved or reconciled yet, I see the cycle of shame as actually like it's an opportunity. It's like God actually knocking on the door if we're able to see it as really conviction. To be able to say, of like, okay, I need to slow this down and see what it is that He's wanting to invite me into.
Man, to see this cycle as an opportunity, that reframes, I think, everything. So for me, I look at it and I'm like, okay, if you have a sore spot at some point, something shaped your heart. There was a sore spot of, let's say, insecurity, and you go to work that day, and you're at work, and maybe your boss says, "Man, you're not meeting your goals. You're not cutting it." All of a sudden, it bumps into that sore spot. You go home, and maybe your spouse or maybe a family member says something that makes you feel devalued, and it gets into that insecurity, that sore spot. Then all of a sudden, in that moment where that sore spot gets bumped and that activation happens and you need to escape because you're just starting to feel the weight of all this, that's the moment where you begin to engage in behaviors that are either of God or not of God. And so even recognizing this cycle because there's some people listening to this podcast right now, they would just say, listen, there's some stuff in my life that people don't even know it.
Yeah.
But I'm at the 6 o'clock. I'm at the bottom. Yeah. I have some behaviors that literally are just the feeling of shame is weighing heavy on me. How do I navigate that? And I think for you to say, man, slowing down, and then big T, little t, big T, the truth of God.
Truth of God. Little t is the truth that we've been telling ourselves, which is I'm no good. I'm not enough. I'm a failure. Like it's the shame, right? It's the bad.
And I know this is going to sound simple. But those who are listening to this podcast, they'll resonate with it. They'll understand. This is why it's so important to be in the Word of God.
Yep. Yeah.
Because you don't get the big T. You got to have the truth to fight the lies in your life. And if all you're hearing are the lies, you're not getting the big T truth. Then it's hard to get off that wheel. It's hard because you are buying into this idea that I am not good enough, I'm inadequate, and the shame just continues to pour over. And so I don't know. I know you actually steer people, hey, here's some passages based on what you're navigating that you need to turn to, but everybody can do that. I mean, you can Google, hey, I'm struggling with fear right now, AI, ChatGPT. Give me some passages on how a Christian should overcome fear, and then begin to read those passages, that big T truth to combat that. Were you gonna say something? Sorry.
I was just going to say of like that opportunity, invitation of like, let's just return for the garden in a minute of like, where did God meet them, right? And it's the call out of where are you? And I used to hear that, like, where are you of like, hey, you're going to be in trouble. But it's not. The where are you is I want to be with you, right? Where have you gone? Yeah. And it's that calling. And when they were stuck in their shame, right? And they were hiding in it, but God came for them. So just knowing that it is an opportunity where God's calling and he's going to share the capital T truths with you. It's good. T truth.
I think one of my passions as a church is that we continue to be a place where folks don't feel like they have to come in and hide their shame.
Yeah.
Because there has to be a place where you do feel like you can deal with that. You know, we talk about working out your stuff.
Yep.
We want to be a place where you can work out your stuff with God. I've been in settings, grew up in one where the church members decided that they were the Holy Spirit, and so they would tell you how wrong you were. And I think that's horrible, because we really need room in our gatherings that's why we have prayer every week in our gathering, just room to be able to sit and go, all right, God, I really need you to heal some areas of my life where I'm struggling. God, would you speak truth to me? Like people say, I don't know if I need to be at church every week. I'll hit it once or twice. It's not because we need full seats. It's because you need the capital T truth in your life. And if you miss a week, double up getting in the Word of God, right? Yep. Because you gotta have that combating the small T truth lies. So
God wants to meet you right where you are, but he doesn't want to leave you there.
Oh man, so good. So this was one of those weeks where we knew it was just going to be a little bit heavy.
Yeah.
Like, and I love that we're tackling some of this stuff. I want to continue to do it. What do we do with Bad Bunny? I have no idea.
I'm going to write a letter to see if we can get John Mellencamp or Shane AI to see if that could be our halftime show. I think it's worth it.
Ty, who are you writing that letter to?
To whom this may concern.
Well, I do want to say this. We certainly have some people in our church who may not even know that we've got a counseling ministry. Now, every time we do this, you guys get inundated. But we figure it out, right? We got a lot of counseling needs. I'm really thankful for our team. But if you go on the website, there is a link where you can actually click set up an appointment if counseling is something you need. And we've tried to reduce that cost as much as we can because we want that to be available for as many people as possible. But it is such a blessing. And I want to thank you before we jump off today. Yeah. You guys are in it. You're in the trenches. And I know God has brought you guys, Shanna, he's brought you guys to Hope City to minister in a way that is so powerful. And so those who are listening who may not ever step foot into the counseling center, I'm just going to ask you guys to pray for this crew, pray for our counseling ministry. It is the biggest blessing, I think, that we see in our church. So having said that, we'll keep tackling these issues. Yeah. These topics.
Kevin, the betting line has not come out yet, but I'd say you're in the running for like rookie of the year for hosts, for people that jump on the podcast with us.
Yeah. Honestly.
I get 2 times my pay then? Is that what comes with that?
Yes. And I would say this, best looking guy we've had on yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who have we had on?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. You're the best looking guy today. How about that? Man, great conversation. Thanks for jumping on. And I always value your wisdom and your input. Yeah. And so we'll jump back on here next week.
Let's tackle
the next part.
Come on.
All right.